Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of this Cancon 2017 list analysis video. I just had to listen briefly to the quality of the previous video, and I noticed that there's this kind of like weird bumping, knocking sound that's happening. I don't know what's causing that, because I'm not touching anything. I'm just chilling here. I'm not sure what's causing that sound. So I will look into that and try to get rid of that for the future. It might require me to actually get a new mic. My mic's is pretty expensive. It's a Yeti, one of those professional Yeti recording mics that I've used for music production. So it's weird that it would be the mic, but I'll have to have a look into that. So sorry about that. So to get into the next part of the video, which I kind of wanted to do this in part 1, but it was getting a bit long. So in this part of the video, I'm going to look at why I didn't do another archetype. And I was already kind of talking about it as I was going, but why didn't I do a different bark star? And the reason why, I didn't do a different bark star is because a different bark star in my mind is not a top tier bark star. I think this bark star is the top tier one, and the other ones are not top tier. So the other ones are worse, effectively. Why is that the case? Other people run bark stars without... Okay, so if you're going to run an ITC bark star, you have to have a Space Wolves walk-in formation. Okay, that's what makes it a bark star. So that's one of your 3 detachments. Then you generally want to put in a Librarius Conclave unit to buff it with psychic powers. That's generally something you want to do because psychic powers are insane in uncomped kind of 40k. Why would you not want to have rerollable saves? Why would you not want to have invisibility? Why would you not want to have counterhand, prescience, whatever else you can get? So it's so obvious that you would take some sort of conclave. It seems like a no-brainer because there's no tax in a Libby conclave. If a Libby conclave had to take 3 units of scouts, people would still take it. Like, there's no doubt. People would still take a Libby conclave if you had to have 3 units of scouts with it. But you don't. You just take these undercosted Libbies that are already undercosted and you get all these free bonuses for free. So you take a conclave, right? As I said in the previous video, there's a bit of conjecture about whether you take the Space Wolves one or a Ultramarines one. Or even there's merit in a Fist of Medusa formation to actually take an Iron Hands one. But I personally think that, once again, Libby Conclave, by far the best. Tiggy was phenomenal. For the pure reason that when you're harnessing on 2s, if you don't have a level 3 in your Conclave, then you'll only ever get really the 2 spells out harnessing on 2s. Which sometimes is enough, because you just kind of cast Invisibility and Veil of Time, and that's generally it. But there's a lot of games where you want to threaten a 3rd spell. Sometimes you want to be able to cast Prescience on your quads. Sometimes you want to be able to threaten a Malediction like a Enfeeble or something else. You know, something. And sometimes you want to cast Force on like a lot of dice, on 3 or 4 dice, to because you're hitting a Wraith Knight or something like that. Or even things like Hammerhand. So many spells that warrant having a 3rd spell to cast. And there were even situations when I was casting Sanctuary as well. There was a game where I cast Veil of Time, Invisibility, and Sanctuary. So I had a 3-up rerollable Invul, and Invisible as well. So I think that you have to go with the Ultramarines Conclave. The only time you would kind of... the Space Wolves one at least gives you a really good shooting. The Living Lightning is a really, really good shooting spell, right? But the problem with it is, even though you harness on 3s, you're using dice to cast a spell that's powerful, but it's robbing from your dice pool that you need your defensive spells. So, in a world where you have Wolf Weirdstorm and you're casting Living Lightning, in that same world, you're having a lot less dice to cast your really, really important defensive spells that the whole star is kind of predicated upon. So, to me, it's like... it's like, I don't know. I could think of an analogy, but it's not relevant. Why? There's no need for an analogy. What makes the list really good? Its ability to defensively buff itself. And if you're spending your dice on Witchfires and stuff like that, you're losing the focus of the list. So that's the point. And then you get to, this is the most contentious kind of call. Some people feel like rather than having Azrael from Dark Angels, it's better to put in Space Wolves, like lots of Thunder Priests, like not Thunder Priests, Wolf Priests, Iron Priests on Wolves, where they have, you either run the HQ or the Elites version, doesn't really matter, and you've got a bunch of these like dudes just running around with Strength 10. You've just got tons of Strength 10, absolutely coming out of everywhere through running a Company of the Great Wolf formation, I think. The one that's just got the mandatory elite slots. That makes sense, right? Like it legitimately makes sense to throw 4 or 5 or 6 priests and even Wolfguard battle leaders and all these like strength 10 dudes on Thunderwolves, and potentially having 2-up saves as well if they're either have Artifice or Runic armor, or the Artificer armor that the Wolf. Is it Artificer? It doesn't really matter if it's Artificer or Runic. The Iron Priests have a 2-up save, so it makes sense. I legitimately understand why people would want to throw in all these strength 10 things. I also understand why people that want to take Fist of Medusa formations want to throw in a bunch of Libby's on bikes from Iron Hands, and the Iron Hands Chapter Fridge as well with with his like the Gorgon's Chain, and then you get like all this awesome Feel No Pain as well from Iron Hands. Like I do get it. Like obviously this was based on the interpretation that when you take an Iron Hands Fist of Medusa, you could also take like 3 Tech Marines as well with every every HQ choice you get a Tech Marine. So people were taking Fist of Medusa and like throwing in tons of extra Tech Marines, and then it's the same idea as the Wolf kind of ICs, except instead of Iron Priests on Wolves, you have Tech Marines on bikes that are kind of doing the same thing in a way. They're just providing you with really efficient high strength attacks. Now, it all makes sense, right? Because you're getting a lot of aggressive power. But I don't think aggression is as good as defense in this list archetype, personally. Some people kind of make the mistake of thinking that, I have 60 wolves, I'm fine. Like, if they shoot me, I'm sweet. I'm just going to let wolves die. But that opens yourself up to the biggest weakness of the list, which is being coherency blocked. You can't afford to just let somebody hit you on the flank and kill 10 wolves, because then they'll block your coherency and the whole game, you lose the game. You can't let somebody get directional shooting on you and blow up 30 dogs in a certain turn. You just can't. You can't let Barrage do that. You can't play Renegades or even Milus with Thud Guns with like Space Marine quads and let them just blow out your wolves from the center of the star that have 6-up armor saves. Like Thud Guns, Thunderfire Cannons, or every form of Barrage, Wyverns, everything will just totally shred your dogs and you will lose the game, because you can't play to a very... One of my biggest win conditions was just not losing. So when you let your dogs die, believe it or not, you can lose the game. So I just think that Azrael stuff, this list does not have much anti-tank via strength 10 or strength 8 to 10 in the actual Death Star. I accept that, and that's a significant weakness. But that is the only real weakness of this list. Azrael gives everything a 4-up invul base, which makes you proofed against Alpha Strikes, and not only that, but proofed against Barrage, which is a huge mechanic in the game. It also proofs you against directional shooting that can try to block your coherency. And as we know, Azrael also gives you a couple of other benefits as well, like +1 to seize and add will and things like that. So for me, the Dark Angel version is clearly the best, right? Purely because of that Azrael factor. You also have to remember Samael. Samael is part of the Dark Angels package, which if you take Space Wolves or if you take Iron Hands, you're not going to have, unless you try to shoehorn Cypher in somehow, you're not going to have hit and run, and that's not good. You want hit and run. And I know you legitimately could take Cypher. That would be a good play. If you're going to do just for all due diligence's sake, if you are going to do the Space Wolves or the Iron Hands version, make sure Cypher's in that detachment so that you can get the hit and run, and Shrouded as well. Which Shrouded would be like a pseudo defense against shooting. So that is viable. But I personally think that the Sammy Azrael combo with the quad mortars, okay, quad mortars are important, even though they are available in the other factions. They're not available in a Fist of Medusa, right? So that Iron Hands will struggle to get these in. Space Wolves can get them in, but I think that the Azrael's Leadership 10 ones helps a lot. I really do believe it helps because it means that they can be positioned right on the board edge, backfield, really defensively and protected. And if you are forced to fall back, you won't get pushed off the board through your morale check. So I do believe that the best way to field this package is with Dark Angels, because you look at that Dark Angels detachment, right? There's not much fat there. Like, it's Azrael's a bargain for 215 points. Samael's pretty good for 200 points. The scouts are actually really important to the list. The list really needs small obsec units to sit on objectives. You really need that in this list. And the quads are amazing. There's nothing in this Dark Angels detachment that you would say, oh, that would be better as points put towards a Iron Priest. In fact, even if you dropped Samael, the scouts, and Azrael, and kept the quad mortars, you wouldn't fit in that many Iron Priests. You would only fit in, trying to remember how many points they are per model. I think they're about 150, 160 points, if I recall correctly. So you're going to fit in, 4 at most. So I don't think that's 3 to 4 is not worth losing Azrael, Samael, and the scouts for. I really don't think it. If you're going to do that version of the list, you're going to end up dropping the quad mortars. You're probably going to end up running a leaner conclave. And I just think you lose everything that's good about the Bark Star. So I feel like my list is or at least the archetype of my list is the best way to run it. So that's my perspective. So how did the list perform? I don't want to be results oriented, but the list I practiced RTT event the week before Cancon. I played Oz Masters with obviously a community comp version of the list. In those 5 games, I lost 1 to Josh Diffie with a community comp version of the Barkstar, which does not really count because it's a totally different format, etc. But the RTT we played was 3 games, and which I went undefeated for, and then at Cancon I went undefeated. So this actual list has won 11 out of 11 games in the Cancon mission format. And you could say that that's lucky, or that whatever the things that you could have lost, you might have lost, and that's true. There were definitely games that were possible to lose, but you have to remember that this list is really proofed against missions it can lose. I've really tried to limit the way it can lose and mitigate it through list building. So that's why I feel like this list was particularly good. The list generally, as far as the missions go, what my aim was to do was to basically play the mission every game. I didn't really try to table my opponent unless I had to. The games where I felt like I had to table my opponents were predominantly, or the only game at CanCon really that occurred was against Michael Hamilton, who was playing a pretty heinous Riptide Wing. And in that game, I kind of felt, okay, if I don't table him, he's probably going to table me or close to it, just because of how ridiculously powerful Riptides are in the Riptide Wing. And yeah, I ended up tabling him, but I had less than 20 dogs left in that game by the end. I think I had about 15 dogs and my ICs left. So yeah, he really took a big toll on me. And that was a game where I managed to get my psychic spells. And that's another thing to say, that I did get my psychic spells basically every game. There was no game where I did not have invisibility and Veil of Time. I think maybe a couple of games I missed Veil of Time, but the games where I needed it, like games against Michael Hamilton, for example, I had it. And that's probably statistically slightly lucky for me, but the fact that I'm running a 4-man Libby Conclave with Tigerius makes me feel good about it, because even though, yes, perhaps I got slightly lucky to get those spells in the games I needed them, I did everything I could do to maximize my chance of getting those spells. Tigerius is, once again, so much better at getting the spells you need. He's absolutely phenomenal. If you are serious about playing this Death Star the way it should be played, which is to guarantee you these defensive spells, then don't complain if you didn't take Tigerius and then you missed the spells. because I was once I missed like if I was rolling for telepathy and I missed invisibility on Tiggy, which happens, and then you move to your level 2s, you instantly realize how much worse they are at generating. But look at their cost. Like the Libby's with just on the bike are 110 points. Tiggy's only 165. Yet Tiggy feels like he's bringing you hundreds of points worth of generating ability. So just to reiterate, please take Tiggy in these lists because you need those spells in the matchups that you might lose. So to go back to those games, when I got these defensive spells, I was just simply playing the mission in as far as I would just, in a game like mission like Crusade, where there's 4 objectives, I did not need to table my opponent. All I needed to do was generate the bonus objectives, like make sure I'm getting the bonus, like the tertiaries, things like if it's first strike, making sure I'm achieving first strike through the thud guns. And then all I need to do is make sure I'm ahead on Maelstrom, use my thud guns to snipe out their units that might be on an objective, go for first strike myself, stop my opponent from killing units, try to make it difficult for my opponent to kill thud gun units, things like keeping a crewman out of line of sight. So even if they kill the artillery and most of the crew, there's still one crewman at the bottom, right, that's out of line of sight. They can't kill him, so they don't kill a unit. Things like that to make it really hard for my opponent to generate Maelstrom. And I'm just sitting there for a lot of the time. A lot of the time I wasn't advancing, because if my opponent had a Colexus Assassin, if my opponent had a lot of short-range shooting, or my opponent had a really powerful Death Star of their own, I didn't necessarily want to put myself in a situation where my opponent could access my backfield, could make it complicated. I did not want to create a situation my opponent could complicate the status quo of which I was already winning the game. So my logic was, I'm 95% chance to win this game. I can try to table my opponent and get full battle points, but then I give my opponent a 20% chance to win the game if things go badly and they can deep stroke behind me and stuff like that. So I just never let that happen and just was playing a control style of play. So for those people that are familiar with collectible card games or are familiar with RTS games like StarCraft, I was playing in a CCG context a control deck, which you wouldn't expect when you look at a Bark Star. You would think, oh, he's playing some sort of rush style. I was playing very much a control style. And to look at an RTS context of like StarCraft, I was playing meta. I was playing like macro style list where I was macroing the whole game and I was just building my board presence, building my control over the game, and just oppressing my opponents with just size of the unit. And a lot of my opponents were in fear of the Bark Star. They deployed very defensively, and they basically ceded board control straight away. So I kind of just like bullied them into the corner and just sat there. A lot of opponents were probably expecting me to follow through and like try to table them, but I did not want to make myself vulnerable to being, manipulated with terms of my coherency. And I also did not want to give myself a position where my backfield units were vulnerable to being, outflanked upon, deep striked on, etc. So, let's say flat out shenanigans from Eldar behind and then threatening my backfield. I just did not let any of that happen. And consequently, my most difficult or my closest games, with respect to all of my opponents, the games where I felt it was the closest to losing, or possibly losing, was Michael Hamilton legitimately could have tabled me, and very much might have if I didn't get both of my defensive spells. I think that if I missed Veil of Time or Invisibility, I legitimately, given that Michael had first turn, likely would have lost to him. And also, the last game I played against Tom Bailey was kill points, and he had a very tight, small army as well. So the game very much was going to come down to, who could get kill points from whom and how. And I managed through keeping very close count of the kind of like the tiers of points, and to make sure I was kind of up on certain tiers and I wasn't achieving unnecessary points, like unnecessary Maelstrom points, things like that. I was able to edge out a very tight win versus Tom that was the tertiary objective of King of the Hill was very important to that, and making sure I could maximize my chance of getting it, and also denying him any chance of getting it was very important. So, other than that, the games, Matt Blair, Eldar opponent game was kind of close, but I feel like he needed some very lucky outcomes at the end to have a chance of getting board control back. So it was just a matter of trying to maximize your chances of garnering board control, and then minimizing your chances of your opponent getting it back. So, that's that. And I feel like overall the list performed very well as a control style list that had the capacity to transition into hyper aggressive, it's got Scout with Samael, very aggressive, very forward if it needs to be. So that is part 2, so to speak, where I talk about the success of the list. Obviously, the list was successful. I'm not going to go into detail about every single game, but I will mention that had I run into certain lists that were playing a non-conventional style, like a Magnus list or a not Battle Company is conventional, or Battle Company, I think that would have been an interesting test of the list that I didn't get to experience. But I do feel like this list was proofed against Battle Company and Magnus. For reasons I have mentioned, it's difficult to give up in kill points. It's quite easy to prevent your opponent from getting Maelstrom, and you can edge out small wins against those lists. So lastly, before we finish this analysis of the Bark Star, I will discuss how I would adjust my list. And fortunately, there aren't too many things to change based on what I mentioned earlier. So this is a version of the list that I've rewritten the list to. The first thing you'll notice if the text is visible on your video is that I changed Samael for Celestine, the Living Saint. And that to me is a no-brainer because of how broken and busted the new Celestine is. She is ridiculous. She should be at least 300 points, but whatever, she's 200 points, that's cool. So done. Like she's a Dark Angel, I guess. Like she doesn't care. She's just going around to wherever she's needed. And Azrael, obviously has a crush on her and is giving her some good reasons to come and join him on this barking, woofing crusade. So that's an obvious transition. And without let's at least get her rules up so we at least have a look at why I'm putting her in. I don't expect you guys to be able to read this at all, but at least lets me read it. This is her new data sheet. So she's 200 points. She's got Hit and Run. She's got Fearless Eternal Warrior, which is very, very important. And also Adamantium Will, which the unit already has. Her stats are Weapon Skill 7, Ballistic Skill 7, Strength Toughness 3, 5 wounds, Initiative 7, 5 attacks, Leadership 10, 2-up save. And she's obviously a jump character. So what's very important and relevant here is that the attacks characteristic is very, very important and relevant and good. And all the other stats are great. But 5 wounds is silly for Celestine. I do not know why she needs 5 wounds. And she's Eternal Warrior, which was her biggest problem before, because she would just get ID'd sometimes. Whereas now, she just has 5 wounds and a 2-up save and Eternal Warrior. So that's cool. And obviously, I think she comes with a 4-up invul. She does. But even if she doesn't, I'm trying to look at her armor or something. Oh yeah, she does have a 4-up invul. But she would have got it anyway from Azrael. Okay, so she comes with 2 Gemini Superior, who are these kind of, obviously buffed up Seraphim kind of dude chicks. And their stats are not that important, but they are 2 wound and 3-up save, right? So 2 attacks each, 2 wounds, 3-up saves. They're just kind of buffed Seraphim. But what's really important about these models is they come with her for free. So these models have to be worth 30 or 40, probably 40 points each. That have to be worth 40 to actually 50, up to 50, maybe 40. Let's say 40 points each conservatively, because they're 2 wounds. They're kind of like a mix between a Seraphim and a Sanguinary Guard type of situation. So they're worth, let's say, 35 to 40 points each, and they every turn, if one has died, they come back for free. Like she generates one every turn. And furthermore, wounds that are allocated to Celestine automatically go to her guardians first until they die. So they have to die before any wounds go into Celestine. So that is dumb and silly because it just gives her this divine shield bubble that keeps regenerating. That's free. That doesn't even cost it. Like these models are supposedly, I think they're worth at least 35 points each. So they're 70 points for two, which effectively makes her only 130 points, which is bonkers. And they come back every turn. So like it's just, I don't get it. She also has an all B that she comes with, and it's a strength 8 AP 3 or B. So it's got the barrage rule as well, so that's really good. Strength 8 AP 3 or B. I like that. So it's free, like you wouldn't not use it. And if you're playing a control style with this list where you're not trying to like beeline straight for your opponent, you're not just trying to like move flat out turn one. If you're just kind of moving into the middle of the board, chilling, then getting to drop an all B with Celestine is actually pretty good. She has the miraculous intervention rule, which means that she gets to come back if she dies. So that's, once again, pretty phenomenal, but interesting. And I will talk about this a little bit because I don't think it's worth trying to... I know the chance of failing the leadership 10 test is something like... Well, it's 3 in 36, right? So it's 1 in 12. I still don't think it's worth taking that 1 in 12 unless you absolutely have to. This list has got so many ablative wounds. Yes, you can tank with Celestine and let her get down to 1 or 2 wounds. With the Gemini that come back every turn. But I don't think you should just let her die and just assume she's going to come back. Because in that 1 in 12 games, and if you're playing an 8-game event and you're letting her die consistently, then over the course of those 8 or 9 games, like LVO's 9 games, if you happen to fail the test once, then you can't really cry foul and cry a victim, because if letting her die is part of your battle plan, eventually you're going to fail a leadership 10 check, and eventually if you're going to get punished, you lose your hit and run. That could be a game you lose because you were too flippant with Celestine's rule. So I would be playing conservative with her miraculous intervention, but it's just insane that she has that ability, because denying the hit and run bearer, killing the hit and run bearer is often a powerful mechanic that players try to do. So being able to use her for that purpose is very powerful. It also makes her a really good challenge acceptor, because it means that your opponent, you will psych your opponent out potentially, or even if you challenge with her and your opponent feels like, ooh, there's no point, then I'm not going to be able to kill her, they might not throw something in that they should, and it just creates complicated decision making for your opponent. Her weapons have slightly changed. She now has her template weapon. It's her sword, Ardent Blade, functions as a template weapon. Strength 5, AP 4, Assault 1. So it's like a heavy flamer. And she also has her sword is +2 strength, AP 3. So it pushes up to strength 5, AP 3. Mastercrafted, but with Armor Bane. Okay, she did not have that before. And that is really, really good for this list. Having a strength 5 Armor Bane model with 5 attacks. And her sword is not... does she have a pistol? She does have a bolt pistol. So she's got 6 attacks. Oh no. Sorry, bolt pistol and power sword are Gemini superior only. So Celestine, it does not look like, has a pistol. No. Well, I'm pretty sure her model doesn't have one, and it doesn't say two-handed, but I don't think she has another weapon. So I think she's just got 5 attacks, but 5 attacks, strength 5 Armor Bane, are pretty good, especially if you can buff her strength at all. I mentioned earlier that Azrael has the 3 warlord traits, which I didn't really go into enough, actually. I don't know why I didn't go into that in more detail, but she has the ability, if you take the Furious Charge Warlord trait against vehicles, then if she can hit with Strength 6 against an Imperial Knight with Armor Bane, her on her own will be enough to really shred it down a little bit, really take hull points off it, allowing giving you that chance to at least take it out maybe in 2 rounds of combat. And it's worth noting she's phenomenal against Imperial Knights, because not only is she like against the Imperial Knight armies, which is probably the biggest archetype that this list is worst against, they want to try to stomp out your hit and run, and they want to stomp out your things that can hurt them. So Celestine is both your hit and run enabler and one of the best models in your army that can hurt them. So they're going to be going for Celestine with their D stomps. So when they hit her with a D stomp, and you might have some dogs around her to insulate her, and they go, okay, stomping Celestine, roll a 6, right? You have to fail your lookout, sir. And trust me, you want to be taking your lookout, sir. You have to fail a 1 in 6, and then you have to fail a 1 in 12, right? So that's a 1 in 72 chance of a D stomp actually removing Celestine. So Celestine is effectively like proofed against Imperial Knights and against how they want to deal with your hit and run block. They don't really block your hit and run. They just try to remove your hit and run. So Celestine just really is proofed against that. So she is really good. Okay, so I think we've covered her, and I think we've done her justice there. So apologies if you can't actually read it, but feel free to try to get your hands on the rules. There are a lot of like blog posts that discuss the rules. So in the worst case scenario, you can at least look at what they are. She also has these saintly blessings, which are not listed here in this particular data sheet that I've got. But they are just free. She's got free rules in a 12-inch bubble she can use once per turn, once per game, for a different slot. Like she can give HQ slots, I think, Zealot, and she can give fast attack slots, Fleet, and things like that. So the ones that are relevant to this list, because the fast attack already have Fleet, so they don't gain anything from it. But being able to give the unit Zealot once per game is good, because it means when you're assaulting, you can use Zealot once. And she also, once per game, can give Lord of Wars within 12 inches, what's it called? It will not die, and it lasts the rest of the game. So if you've got nothing better to do with Celestine as far as blessings go, you can just go, boom, what's his name? Azrael just gets, it will not die. If it's ever going to be relevant, which it probably won't be, but, it's free. So it's pretty good. She's absolutely bonkers for her points cost. She should be about 315, 320 points. I'd say people would still order. I would still take her in the list if she was 320 points. So that probably says enough, really. Would I take her? Well, she's definitely better than Samael, but this Gemini are really good as well, because they just keep coming back and they keep tanking for free, and they keep giving you density of your star. Like at the start of the game, you put Celestine at the front, or somewhere near the front of the unit to tank, but you put her Gemini right at the back. Like there's no reason why your Gemini would not be right at the back of your unit, which means that when you're losing models, your opponent's not impacting on the density of the front of your star. So it's just really good. All right, so as you can see, I removed my Scouts sniper rifles because they weren't relevant. They, they just very rarely shot, and when they did shoot, sometimes bolters would have been better because of rapid fire and stuff like that. So I need the points to squeeze in what I wanted to do. As you can see here, I want to increase that quad mortar unit, the second unit that was only 2 models, back up to 3. I want 2 units of 3 quads to emphasize the strength of the list, which is really making it hard for my opponent to get kill points. Putting the unit up to 3 makes it harder to kill. Obviously, it also increases its output, but primarily, I'd say I'm more worried about or more interested in making it more survivable, because, that unit of 2 was always the mark that my opponents went for first strike and for kill points. They always saw the unit of 2 thuds and said, okay, that's something I can kill, and they'd go for it. Making it 3 makes it more difficult for them to do that. So I just think they were phenomenal, and there's no reason why I wouldn't want to take another one. In order to do that, I've had to drop a couple of wolves. So as you can see here, I'm at 58 wolves. So I've gone down from 64 to 58. I've lost 6 wolves, but you have to remember that I've gained Celestine that comes with the 2 Gemini that are 2 wound models, and they come back. And Celestine has a better tanking profile than Sammy. So I think I've more than compensated for losing the 6 wolves through gaining an extra 2 models through the Gemini and also having them come back. So while it does seem like my unit's lost survivability, I don't actually think it has. I think it's actually gained survivability through having these, every turn having a Gemini come back for free with 2 wounds. Because your opponent almost... You're not necessarily going to lose a Gemini every turn because some shooting's not going to hit Celestine. But if you have Celestine somewhere near the front, sometimes shooting will hit her, and you'll at least let 1 Gemini die so that you get it back. So it's very possible to envisage manipulating the positioning to try to have at least 1 Gemini die every turn. Okay, so that is that change. I did not change the conclave at all. I was pretty happy with it. I didn't think that there were any problems with the weapons loadouts. So that's pretty much that. And the total came in at 1849 with those changes. So I'm still with, I'm still legal. It's all good. And that's that. So I hope you've enjoyed that analysis, guys. I'm not going to push this on any longer than it needs to. Apologies again for any sound issues that have persisted in this half of the video. I will try to get them rectified. So apologies for that. But I hope you enjoyed this insight into my barkbark star. And if you've got any requests for future Breaking the Meta videos or State of the Meta, which is the podcast I do with Sean, any requests for coverage on either this medium or the podcast, please send us a PM and I'll try my best to get onto that. So thanks, guys, and catch you next time.